सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen तो.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
It is quite evident that a very vast majority of Indians generally go with the established view on Kashmir, established view and establishment view, and that's why there is wide support also for the abrogation of Article 370, even among our political parties, barring maybe the CPM. Nobody has really opposed the abrogation, they've questioned the method. But this is a democracy. In a democracy, majority is important, but the majority is not always right. Because if majority is always right, then you have a problem called majoritarianism. So those who are not in a majority and have a different view, they need to be heard also. And while you may disagree with them, you must disagree with them with your reasoning and with healthy arguments. That's what I'm trying to do today in this national interest. On the issue of Kashmir, I am trying to pick an argument with the very articulate, very doughty, very well-meaning and sincere liberal community. I'm not mocking it, I'm not mocking them. In fact, I am responding to many of the doubts and issues they have in their minds about India's Kashmir policy or India's claims in Kashmir. And I'm only countering that with facts, or not countering, in fact, I'm giving it 5 fact checks and 1 reality check. 5 fact checks come from archives and from documented history. 1 reality check comes from my own point of view, which comes in the end, which actually is a conclusion of these 5 facts. So first of all, why is India not implementing the UN Security Council resolutions? So we talk about what the Security Council resolution said. Essentially, the foundational resolution had 3 points. Number 1, Pakistan should withdraw all its forces from Kashmir, which they never did. Number 2, India should thin out its troops, leaving out the minimum to maintain law and order. And third, India should then set up an all-party government in Kashmir, which will be like a plebiscite government, while the UN appoints a governor who comes, or commissioner who comes and holds a plebiscite. So both India and Pakistan merrily violated this because Pakistan never withdrew its army. Step 1 wasn't taken, so India saw no particular need to take step 2 and 3. So those resolutions were never followed by either side. First obligation was Pakistan's, not India's. Second, why are we then not settling it under Shimla Agreement? So what is the Shimla Agreement? Once again we say, read the Shimla Agreement. Shimla Agreement doesn't say Kashmir is a problem which has to be resolved in those terms. Shimla Agreement says all problems between India and Pakistan now are bilateral, which means no UN resolutions, no mediation. In the 60s, there was strong mediation by some foreign mediators formally in the India-Pakistan talks. So no mediation. So the history that began in 1947 with the UN resolutions then ended in 1972. But Shimla Agreement has also been violated, but unlike the UN resolutions, it's been violated only by one party, that is Pakistan. Because as soon as Bhutto signed the Shimla Agreement, he went back and he started working on his nuclear weapon. In fact, he called it the Islamic bomb. He held the OIC summit in Lahore and announced the Islamic bomb there. And once the Pakistanis had the comfort of their nuclear weapon by 1989 and the confidence having defeated the Soviets in Afghanistan, that they were back at India's throats. Once again, trying to take Kashmir by force. In the middle, in 1965, they had launched a full-fledged war starting in first week of August by sending couple of tens of thousands, in fact more infiltrators, which were basically Pakistani army soldiers in civilian uniform, but carrying regular issue Pakistani weapons to try and take Kashmir and create an insurrection. That didn't happen. So first week September, Ayub Khan launched, Field Marshal Ayub Khan launched what was called as Operation Grand Slam. First was Operation Gibraltar to take Kashmir by brute military force, so tanks were sent in and it was a full-fledged attack. That failed also. So 47, 65, Pakistan failed to take it by force. So the third question, can India keep Kashmir through military power forever? To which I ask a counter, but can a country take Kashmir with military power, by using military power from India? Pakistanis have tried that and they have failed. So we go on raising other similar questions. Now, plebiscite. Okay, you don't want Kashmiris to go to Pakistan, let them be independent. Everybody wants Azadi. So we again say, read the text of the UN resolutions. The UN resolutions don't give the option of Azadi. They only give two options, choose India or choose Pakistan. So Pakistan has played this great subterfuge and this Goebbelsian campaign over these many years, calling the part of Kashmir it has occupied or it controls Azad Kashmir. That's a fallacy. There is no such definition, there is no such presumption, there is no such option that Kashmir will be Azad or independent of India or Pakistan. That is a lemon that the Pakistanis have sold to some sections of the global commentariat and to some people in Kashmir. The option is just India and Pakistan. That's my brutal fact check. And finally, my reality check, which is my own analysis, that you have to now accept the logic of Shimla Agreement, which is that this line of control is the border between the two countries. Essentially, this border has now survived more than 70 years, barring minor changes here and there. Nobody can change it. We don't need Bill Clinton again to come to the subcontinent and tell us by wagging his finger that lines on the maps of the subcontinent can no longer be drawn in blood. It's never going to happen. This line is now the border. Once you accept that this line is the border, then you can address problems. There are problems in Kashmir. On our side of Kashmir, there is anger, there is alienation, there is violence, there is bloodshed, there is human rights violations, there are excesses, there is denial of freedoms, all that is there. But you can only address it once you accept that there will not be any change in the political, sovereign or territorial status of Kashmir. This national interest, we do the opposite. We are trying to argue with those of the nationalist right, and we are trying to question, or we are trying to give a tough fact check as brutal as what we had given to the liberal mythologies, to the mythologies of the right nationalists on Kashmir. And these now range from questions in many ways are the mirror image of the liberal mythologies. So these are questions like 370, Article 370 was the only thing that was keeping Kashmiris away from India. What's in the hearts and minds of Kashmiris is not so important. So first it was Article 370. So we give you some facts and some realities to explain to you why that is not good enough. It was a symbol of a problem, but it wasn't a problem. It was a symptom of a problem, symptom or a symbol. And we'll explain in detail when you read the written version how. Number two, Pakistan is all there is to the problem in Kashmir. Kashmiris by and large would never do any of this. There would be no armed insurgency, there would be no alienation if there was no Pakistani interference. Once again, it is not entirely incorrect, but it's about only 1/4 correct. That Pakistan does play a very important role and very key role when it comes to insurgencies. It also plays a very important and very key role when it comes to propaganda, in terms of exaggerating and amplifying the sense of grievance and alienation on the ground. But the larger part, which is true and which the nationalist right cannot hide away from, is that there is a very deeply felt anger and humiliation among the population of Kashmir Valley, especially the Muslims of Kashmir Valley. And that comes not so much from their love of Pakistan. In fact, if you open the borders tomorrow and ask people to choose, I'm not sure many would go to Pakistani side of Kashmir. But that comes from a feeling. Now you may say this is right or wrong, that's a different matter, we can have an argument. That comes from a feeling that since 1947, India has not considered us a state equal to any other state in the Union, and that is only because we are Muslim majority. That alienation is a reality. That Article 370 withdrawal or Pakistan's marginalization will not change. The next myth that now with a bit of tough action, with a few weeks of curfew, etc., sabko akal aa jayegi, they will all see sense, they will accept the inevitability. Now, if you ask me that question, I will give you a counter. I think most people accept the inevitability that there will not be a change in the territorial or sovereign status of Kashmir. But are they happy with what they have? Are they happy with, will they submit to their fate without asking questions? Will they say, all right, now that Mr. Modi has done it, everything is over, my submission is no? That is a very dangerous and very short-sighted mythology of the right nationalists. Next, that all Kashmir needs is more economic development. On many economic indicators, Kashmir is ahead of the rest of India. Definitely, it's ahead of UP, Bihar, etc., where Madhya Pradesh, where large number of Indians live, very large number of Indian Muslims also live, many more than in Kashmir. So, economic development is important, but what is not so important is that people going and setting up plants and units in Kashmir. What is more important is making more Kashmiris welcome in the rest of India. So as more and more Kashmiris find education, jobs, develop a vested interest in the larger national entity of India, I would oversimplify it by saying if they start owning shares in Indian companies, if they earn money working for mainstream companies, they invest that money somewhere. That's how citizens in modern times develop a national commitment and vested interest. It does not come from singing anthems, whether you sing it voluntarily or whether you are forced to do this. And finally, I would say, and if I may say so, the most short-sighted right nationalist myth that you can now change, now that 370 and 35A are gone, you can go and change the demographics of Kashmir, and then once there are more Hindus than Muslims, or once there is a large enough number of Hindus, situation will change. It doesn't happen like that. That experiment has been made in many countries in the past. Really bad guys have done it, and really tough states have also done it, tough states which have a very strong liberal core. So a state like Israel has tried to do it in West Bank, just settling more and more Jews. It doesn't work because no place can survive as a normal, quote unquote, normal place unless neighbors live there, diverse neighbors can live there, but unless diverse neighbors live there with dignity, with love and confidence with each other and voluntarily. The moment you try and bring in people and change the demographic balance, and it's not so easy either. To change the demographic balance just of Kashmir Valley, you will have to move more than 1 crore, if you can do it, more than 1 crore of your faithfuls, Hindu faithfuls there. It's not going to happen. I will conclude this with one example. In Israel, there was a big thing about Old Jerusalem, that in the Muslim quarter, why can't Jews go and live there? And a very famous Israeli and a very famous and a man of phenomenal courage and talent, also a phenomenal nuttiness, Ariel Sharon, a big political leader of Israel, general, hero of the Yom Kippur War, he decided to set up his house there. For a long time, the house was there, he put a candelabra on top of the house, a platoon of Israeli soldiers had to guard that house. All that house remained always was, it never changed anything on the ground, it never changed the power or demographic balance. All it did was, it has continued to be like a giant finger in the eye of the Muslims living there. So these things don't work. So for everybody, especially for right nationalists, stop declaring victory and go back to normal, because Kashmir essentially is where it was on the ground. You have to address that problem. If you try to hide behind these few headlines that we've seen over the past few weeks, then consequences are going to be disastrous.